What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Bush coming at you solo today to break down 20 players, as I always do on Saturdays. We're talking about 5 must starts at running back, 5 must sits at running back, 5 at wide receiver, and 5 at wide receiver. All the obvious names are ranked highly due to the amount of buys that we have this week. So we're digging deep today, talking about guys outside my top 25 or so at running back, top 30 or so at wide receiver. Basically, these videos are a culmination of all the start sit videos I do throughout the week, as well as the DFS articles that I write. So not necessarily DFS videos, but they do have DF implications if you guys decide to play DFS this week. If you enjoy this video at any point, as always, hit the like button, comment any of your thoughts down below, and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Without further ado, we're going to hit the intro and get right into this. So the 5 must-start running backs, you guys can see them on the screen right now. Number 1 is Devontae Booker. Devontae Booker has a tough matchup for sure this week against a Panthers defense that ranks number 1 in adjusted fantasy points allowed to the running back position. But Booker's role should be matchup proof, playing an 80% snap share over the last 2 weeks, handling over 70% of the rush attempts and 64% of the routes. This game script should also be much less of a blowout than it was last week against the Rams. So Devontae Booker should be in for a big workload this week. Number 2 on the list is Elijah Mitchell. It's pretty clear how the 49ers view this backfield, in my opinion. Mitchell is the new Raheem Mostert. He's played 61% or more of the snaps in every game that he's been the starter and he's been on the field. He gets the bulk of the carries. He's running about 50% of the routes. JaMychal Hasty is back this week, so we'll see how that affects the backfield, whether they make Trey Sermon inactive again or whatever the case is. But I expect JaMychal Hasty to get some involvement maybe on the goal line or something like that. But nonetheless, Elijah Mitchell is a guy that is inside my top 24 this week, guy that you can start with confidence against the Colts defense. Number 3 on the list, must start running back, J.D. McKissic. He saw 10 targets last week in a loss to Kansas City. They play the Packers this week in what could be a very similar game flow, game situation. Yet again, it sucks as an Antonio Gibson owner, knowing that J.D. McKissic might be the more involved running back, especially with Antonio Gibson being questionable coming into this game, again, with the shin injury. So they might limit his workload to some degree. But nonetheless, in a game where we expect Washington to lose and be down in this game, J.D. McKissic could see a big-time target role again. Number 4 on the list is Khalil Herbert. Khalil Herbert is basically a startable piece regardless. We got a report from a Bears beat reporter saying that he's earned more carries and earned more volume. Now, whether Damian Williams is on the field or not, Khalil Herbert's in my lineup because basically what we've seen is that Damian Williams is not yet activatable until today, which is, Saturday. And it's been all week. They've been game planning for this game, and Damian Williams hasn't been in practice involved in the game plan. So I expect, even if Damian Williams plays, Khalil Herbert to be the primary back in this backfield. Again, it is a tough matchup against Tampa Bay, but the volume that Khalil Herbert should see should be enough to keep him afloat as a back-end RB2, high-end RB3 type, whether Damian Williams plays or not. So the 5th and final must-start running back is Michael Carter. Carter has risk attached to him because this Jets offense could lay another egg similar to what they did in week 2 against New England, where Zach Wilson was completely under duress. He couldn't actually, process anything really, and the Jets didn't get anything going on offense. But I think this game will be much more competitive than that week 2 contest. Carter has seen 55% of the rush attempts in 3 straight games, and he's had an increase in route participation each of those 3 games as well. Plus, he could be in store for one of those post-bye rookie bumps. As you guys can see on the screen, you can see his workload there. It has been increasing with each week that's gone on. And now coming off the bye week, maybe we get his biggest workload yet. Now moving on to the must-sits at running back, and this is going to be a bit tough because I'm sure a lot of you guys will have to play some of these guys, having, Dalvin Cook, James Robinson, Zeke Elliott, Najee Harris, Austin Eckler, all these guys on bye. I'm sure you guys are going to have to pick up guys off the waiver wire and start them if you have a number of bye weeks this week. I know, for example, I have to start Michael Carter and Damian Williams, whether he plays or not. And if he doesn't play, I'm going to have to pick up somebody in our listener league. So Alex Collins is my first must-sit running back, and this is only if Collins plays. If he's out, I think Rashad Penny is a solid start that can clear up this backfield and make Rashad Penny the guy that's going to get the bulk of the work. But if they're both active, which it looks like is going to be the case, the Saints defense is allowing the 10th fewest adjusted fantasy points to running backs, and they rank 2nd in rush defense DVOA. The Seahawks are probably going to have a hard time moving the ball in general, especially if Metcalf might be out for this game. So I'm not really excited about this Seahawks backfield. I think they're going to score, a limited amount of points against a very tough defense. So I'm not really willing to start anybody unless Alex Collins is out. Then I can throw in Rashad Penny as a top 30 running back. But nonetheless, I'm still not excited about him either. So number 2, we have Devontae Freeman. I don't really care that Latavius Murray is out for this game. This team is a full-blown running back by committee. Maybe Devontae Freeman gets most of the work. Maybe it's Le'Veon Bell. Maybe it's Tyson Williams. Who the hell knows? I'll just avoid this backfield altogether. This Bengals defensive front has been very good against the run, and I don't expect these putrid Ravens running backs to actually do anything against the Bengals run defense. If anybody's going to do damage on the ground, it's going to be Lamar Jackson. So not interested really in any of these Ravens running backs this week. Number 3 is Mark Ingram. I know Ingram has had back-to-back weeks of 15-plus carries, but this game script favors a guy like David Johnson. They're playing against the Cardinals, and the Cardinals also are very good against the run too. So I'm not expecting the Texans to get much going on the ground. They're probably going to have to throw their way back into this game with Kyler Murray putting up points on the other side of the field. A.J. Dillon, another guy that I'm sitting this week. He has a modest role in this offense that could result in a bit of fantasy production here and there. But the truth about A.J. Dillon's role is that he gets all of the low-value touches that keep Aaron Jones fresh. He gets all the 3rd and 2s, the 2nd and 4s, excellent handcuff, right? He's definitely a guy that we want to have on our rosters because if anything happens to Aaron Jones, he's going to be a borderline RB1 the rest of the season, but he doesn't really have any standalone value because he's not really involved in the receiving game, doesn't get a whole lot of work on the goal line. Basically just a guy that takes away the dirty carries from Aaron Jones. So he's not a guy that I'm willing to start. Final must-sit running back of this video is Kenyon Drake, running back for the Las Vegas Raiders. Don't chase last week's 2-touchdown performance for Kenyon Drake. He only played 20% of the snaps and saw 16% of the carries and an 8% target share. It was a fluke performance. He got into the end zone twice. It's not going to happen again. So make sure you're not chasing Kenyon Drake's last week performance over some better options. Now, moving from running backs over to wide receivers, we'll talk about some of the must-start wide receivers this week in fantasy. And the first 2 wide receivers really at the top of the list to me are the Chicago Bears. So Darnell Mooney and Allen Robinson. The Bears are trying to take the ball out of Justin Fields' hands by running it a lot. Unfortunately, they won't be able to do that this week. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are allowing just over 50 rushing yards per game, which is an absolutely absurd number. They're one of the best run defenses of all time, really, if they continue to keep up that pace. Fields is going to have to throw the ball, and the Bucs are allowing top 5 fantasy points to wide receivers. So if Fields throws the ball, he's going to have some success. Of course, we know 3 of the top 4 corners for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are out. Jamel Dean is the only guy that is really a starting corner for this team that is in the lineup right now. So they should be able to take advantage of them through the air. Number 2 is Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd is a guy that is really going to benefit from a little bit more pass attempts in this game. The Cincinnati Bengals have thrown the ball 34 times on average in their 2 losses, but just 26.5 times in their 4 wins. The Ravens are currently favored by 6.5 points in this game at home, which should lend itself to more passing volume for the Bengals offense. And Tyler Boyd has the best matchup on the field, facing Tavon Young in the slot, who's allowed 19 targets, 16 receptions, 175 yards, and a touchdown line in his coverage thus far this season. So he's a guy that I'm definitely willing to start. Christian Kirk, another guy that I think needs to be in your starting lineups going forward. Kirk has been able to take advantage of good matchups so far, and this is really no exception. Part of the reason I like the Cardinals players in this game and I like the Cardinals, rest of season is due to the fact that the Cardinals also have a top 10 defense in pass defense and rush defense DVOA. So they're able to possess the ball for longer periods of time. In years past, we've seen the Cardinals just not be able to get off the field on defense, and that's limited their offense in terms of the amount of time that they're running plays and on the field producing fantasy points. So that's definitely good news. In this game, we expect them to be ahead of the Houston Texans, probably force a lot of 3-and-outs, some turnovers, and get a lot of offensive possessions out of that. So moving on to the 4th start at wide receiver, it's Robbie Anderson, 29%, 21%, and 27% target shares in each of the last 3 games. And now we have Terrace Marshall out this week. Definitely has a chance to do something in the box score against the top 3 matchup in adjusted fantasy points allowed to wide receivers in the New York Giants. I actually really like Robbie Anderson from a DFS perspective this week if you guys are looking for a cheap wide receiver. And the 5th and final must-start wide receiver of this video is actually Hunter Renfrow. I actually like Renfrow the most out of the Raiders wide receivers this week because the way that the Eagles defense is designed is that they keep everything in front of them. They don't get beat over the top, which obviously hurts a guy like Henry Ruggs and Bryan Edwards. To beat Philly, you have to run the ball with Josh Jacobs in this game, and you have to win with short passes. Basically, what we saw from Tampa Bay last week was they won with short passes to Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin and to OJ Howard, but they were able to run the ball with Leonard Fournette, and that's how they were able to be successful in that game, which is not really the way that the Buccaneers operate on offense. And I think this game screams Darren Waller. This game screams Hunter Renfrow in this one. So I'm willing to put Hunter Renfrow into my lineup in any kind of PPR format. Definitely could be a heavily targeted option in this game. Now to the must-sits at wide receiver. Mecole Hardman sits at the top of this list for me, pun intended. He's still running less routes than Demarcus Robinson. It's a great matchup for Mecole Hardman, so don't get me wrong there, but a lot of people are going to chase Mecole Hardman. They're going to throw him into their lineup thinking he's going to catch a long touchdown, and that definitely could happen, but I don't want to start either of these guys. Demarcus Robinson is the guy that I would start if I had to choose because he is on the field a lot more than Mecole Hardman is. Number 2 on this list is Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's as a slot receiver for the Lions, he's going to see a lot of Jalen Ramsey, so I'm not, messing with Amon-Ra St. Brown this week. Number 3 on this list is T.Y. Hilton. T.Y. Hilton always goes off against Houston. It's basically a running meme at this point. He got banged up in less than 1 game back from injury. Plus, Michael Pittman Jr. is still the number 1 receiver on this team. So T.Y. Hilton, I'm not chasing last week's points or last week's production for T.Y. Hilton. The 4th guy that I'm going to talk about as a must-sit wide receiver is Bryan Edwards. As I mentioned with Hunter Renfrow, it's hard to create big plays against this defense. Edwards has been about a 3 to 5 target per game guy anyways, which simply isn't enough volume to go around, especially when I expect a big game out of Waller and a big game out of Renfrow in this one, and probably a lot of carries for Josh Jacobs. So not a big game for Bryan Edwards that I'm anticipating here. Number 5 is Van Jefferson, the last player that we're going to talk about in this video as a must sit. Some people are going to be tempted to attack the Detroit defense, but the Lions have actually been surprisingly decent against wide receivers, ranking 26th in adjusted fantasy points allowed. So if you guys enjoyed this video, as always, hit the like button. It looks like this helps us out tremendously, helps us grow. Comment down below any of your thoughts and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out, and I'll talk to you next time.